Caitlyn Clark, 1 vote shy of unanimous Rookie of the Year. There's an argument to be had, bro. Can we find out who that one was?
Kendrick Perkins, probably.
Welcome to Bogues Basketball Series. We're back. NBA season about to commence. NBL season has started. This will be the last of the bi-weekly, much to my despise. Pros won that battle. We're going to do this one in 2 weeks, and then we're going back to weekly, Pro. So you get the W. Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. You can't really call yourself a podcast when every 5 months we're seeing each other. So I'm glad you're actually, coming to the way that that most podcasts would be like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, the bigger news. You're live from your childhood home, Pro. Tell us more.
Yeah, childhood home. I was in Washington D.C. last week working with an NBA player, and I got a call saying, "Hey, are you going to our aunt George's surprise birthday party?" I said, "It's a fucking surprise to me. I don't even know about it." So I was like, "All right, let me book this flight." So I had a book last week, and then so I'm staying with my brother. Little non-political but political story. I usually stay at this great hotel. I like it because it's like a Residence Inn Marriott, but it's been rented out to all immigrants. So it's they're not taking any more reservations. So I'm just staying with my brother. And the childhood home is downstairs. They're upstairs. So I'm I'm the third wheel down here, and all the family is upstairs. And no, I'm not a POW, or I'm not kidnapped against my will. This is a downstairs apartment, and we're good to go.
Is that a shower curtain over your left shoulder?
This is a curtain. This is a curtain that goes into another room. So
okay. This is near the arena, isn't it? Is this near the old Boston Garden or not?
No, that was my old house. This is Revere. So it's like 8 minutes from the Boston Garden.
And by the way, did you say it was a 90-year-old party? 90?
Her 90th birthday party, yeah.
That's pretty high risk to have a surprise birthday party for a 90-year-old. Just saying, man.
Well, she survived it, so hey, I'll see you at 91, Bogues.
It's pretty risky shit. That could go. There's only 2 ways that can go. But let's get into the basketball.
Maybe there's some inheritance money.
Yeah. Let's get into the basketball. A lot going on. Nothing big, but a fair few kind of contract extensions and all that kind of stuff. But the biggest news of the last week or so is the Karl Anthony Towns trade. Now, we spoke about this, Pro, about a year ago, no? I'm putting that out there.
Yes, we did.
I think we mentioned this, that there were some rumors back then. We spoke about it, about Towns, some interest there, the agents, all that kind of stuff. And there was fire to that smoke. So it's finally happened. Karl Anthony Towns goes to the New York Knicks, 3-team trade. Towns to New York with the draft rights to James Nagy. Julius Randle to the Wolves, DiVincenzo to the Wolves, Bates Diop to the Wolves, future first-round pick to the Wolves, Hornets, Charlie Brown, Daquan Jeffries, Dwayne Washington Jr., 2 future second-rounders, a 2025 second-round pick, and cash. So Hornets just in ultimate tank mode, blowing their thing up, starting from scratch, which is kind of what you need to do. They've got some good young pieces there that they're trying to build around or free up a bunch of cap space for them, a bunch of future picks. But we don't really need to talk too much about the Hornets. Does this really change the New York Knicks into a legitimate Eastern Conference contender?
I think it improves them, yes, for sure. I mean, I think just with their spacing of how they were going to play, I think that having Randle clog it up, and look, this is not a shit on Randle type of situation. It's just how it was going to be. I think with the spacing with, Brunson and Bridges and the way they want to play, I think Randle, look, he's a weapon. He could score. He could do his thing. But they needed more of a guy that could spread the floor, give them shooting, give them somebody that's not going to dominate the ball. The pecking order is in place. And I think in Minnesota, there was a little bit of a sort of, hey, we got to get the ball to Towns. Yes, Edwards is our guy, but we got to get the ball to Towns. I think in New York now, with Brunson and Bridges already established that they're the top 2 players in the team, and then everybody else sort of plays their role. I think that this is better for Towns and them. It improves their spacing. They could play a stretch 5 because I think he's more of a 5 now instead of like a 4-5. I think he's sort of shifted to that straight 5. So it gives him a different look offensively for sure. Defensively, he's limited in what he can do and things, but not a big time rim protector or anything, but offensively it gives him options. With Randall, Randall has to hold the ball stops. He has to sort of play his game, which in some situations helps you when you need scoring in certain situations. But I think that the way they want to play, the way they want to space, I think this is better for the Knicks. And then Minnesota too. I think it's good. DiVincenzo adding the extra player with Randall, it gives them some combination situations. But I think getting the extra player really helps them more than getting Randall. Randall and DiVincenzo, somebody who could score, could handle the ball, and has basketball IQ, helps them as well. But I think the Knicks are in a good spot right now.
I think you hit it on the head though. The Towns thing. He showed early in Minnesota he didn't. During the playoffs, he showed he could accept a role. That's a small sample size, though. Previous to that, he wasn't happy at times with touches, and then obviously Edwards solidified himself as a one. I thought Towns did a good job in the playoff series of playing a good role. He was coming back from injury, so it could be fool's gold. If he continues to buy into that role, I think he can be very valuable for the Knicks. My concern is the games where he has six shots, 7 shots, low touches, because Brunson's hot, Bridges are hot, and that ball's not just not finding him. Will he pout and be even worse at the defensive end and give less effort? That's my concern with this. He's not a great defender by any means. He's never been a great defender. Can he get his defense? Hopefully they can get him, Thibs can get him from a below average defender just to an average for a big. Just get him to an average and then you've got something. But that's a concern for me, is can he buy into being that? He was an all-star, right? I think he made an all-star team or two. He's had some great years. He's an elite player, elite scorer, but doesn't need to be that on this Knicks team. And I like the stretch 5. It spaces the floor for him. Randall to the Wolves, I agree. I don't know how that fits with Edwards. Every man and his dog knows that 80% of the usage is going to go through Edwards. I do like DiVincenzo there. I love him as a player. I think a solid, probably a little bit better than a 3-and-D guy, but really, really good. Been around the league, played numerous roles, can give you more when you want him, when you need him to, if you've got injuries, and then can play a lesser role if you need him to. I like that acquisition for them. How Randall fits in that system, I don't know, because he does need the ball. He doesn't do a whole lot outside of getting mass touches, and that's where he's at best. So he probably thinks, well, you got me here. You need to feed me and get me going. So I don't think it heavily moves the needle for either team. I think it improves New York a little bit. It probably even helps the Wolves a little bit just to solidify, making sure that, Randall's Edwards is our guy, and I'm sure they're going to have those conversations. But it will be interesting to see how Towns fits in with those two that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I think Thibodeau, being one of the better coaches in the league and, a great teacher of defense, I think he could teach him to be, a serviceable team defender for sure. Yep. He's never going to be all that motivated to play defense. I think the role thing, I think you brought up a great point. If he can accept his role. The good thing about the Knicks is they don't really care if he does or doesn't. Look, they did most of their damage without Randall. They were shorthanded, obviously. But like if he fits in, he fits in. He doesn't, he doesn't. They got, now he still has that contract and that number. But I think he'll be okay. He's not a bad guy. I've been around him. I've worked with him before when I was in China, and I was around him when I was doing some consulting for Minnesota. Look, he'll pout like any other NBA player when he's not getting what he needs to get. But I think that, he's good enough of a guy character-wise to be like, look, obviously he's not going to admit that he's a 4th option or 3rd and a half option, because it's like him and OG, what have you. And you got Josh Hart there too. But like the way they play, they could just now the problem for them is they're light with numbers. Mitchell Robinson's hurt. He's not going to be back till, I think.
With your Towns comments, sorry to cut you off, but just looking at their roster to confirm it, Robinson's hurt right now. Reportedly knee again, I think it was. They're thin, big guy wise. Hartelstein's obviously gone. So you're relying on Towns to play bulk minutes at the 5, making sure Robinson's at least giving you 20 a night, which he hasn't done the last 4 or 5 years consistently without getting injured. Who's that third big that comes in? I mean, it seems like it's camp/rookie guys.
Jericho Sims.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah. So it's like they're super thin. And then all of a sudden, OG is going to slide to the 4 at times. Josh Hart's going to slide to the 4 at times. They did that a little bit last season. Achua as well will slide it to some 4, but you are super thin there. So there is, like you said, Thibs they have to get on Towns to be just a competent, good team defender for them to at least get through to face the Boston Celtics in the conference finals.
Yeah, and losing DiVincenzo is going to be big too. And a shooter and a guy that knows how to play. This is why I think that Minnesota may have gotten a little bit more in this if they could figure out the whole dynamic. Now, remember, they got Naz Reid there too. So, like, they can go Naz Reid and Gobert, like, if this whole Randall thing doesn't work. Now, sometimes we jump the gun on guys not going to be happy with their role and this and that. Sometimes we could ballpark it pretty good as far as who's going to be good, who's going to be bad. We don't really know with Randall. Obviously, I think at first he'll be okay and figure things out. He's going to get his touches, even with Edwards being the number one option without question. There's going to be plenty of situations where he can get the ball in his hands and give him the ball in different lineups and things like that.
I'd almost bring him off the bench. I'd almost bring Randall off the bench and just have him play that Jamal Crawford, that role of, like, Edwards is coming out at a certain point in the first. Once he comes out, we're going through you. Beasley had a similar role at times with Miami Heat. I would love to see that rather than having the pressure of starting with Edwards and Nas and those guys and trying to find your spot of when to shoot, when not to. Then you just give him the keys and you play him 15 or 20 off the bench, and if he's hot, you play him 30.
The good thing about it, though, for him, Bogues, if he does have the starting role, which I think he would, is you got Mike Conley and Jaden McDaniels in that starting lineup. They're both really non-scorers, to be honest. So Edwards is going to take most of the shots. There's plenty of room for him. Gobert's not going to get shots unless it's a rim run or a lob at the rim. So there'll be opportunity. It's just like the spacing part. Some people are enamored with spacing. Some people are not, as far as they don't care about the spacing as much. I think it will work. They got a good coaching staff. They got good players. Again, I really like that DiVincenzo. We were talking last year a lot about just a straight 1-for-1 trade. If it's a 1-for-1 trade, then New York would have the upper hand without question. I think getting the second player in their rotation to get a guy that could score, that could shoot, that could make plays, that could just sort of, just knows his role, knows how to impact winning. I think that he'll be good. He'll be excited because, he'll probably have a little bit more of a role there than he did in New York, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens, but it'll be interesting. I think Minnesota, I'm not a big fan of winning trade, losing trade, but I think they got a little bit more in this trade than, just because of the DiVincenzo piece.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Embiid, moving on real quick, just some extensions. Embiid, 3-year, $193 million extension. I think his total salary now is one of the richest in league history. Terrence Mann, 3-year, $47 million with the Clippers. And a good story, Alvarado, 2 years, $9 million. So you love to see guys like that just grinding through a training camp and getting on a roster spot, and then all of a sudden getting a nice little contract for them. So congrats to those guys. There's a few other contracts that we don't need to get too much into, but they're the extensions so far, pro. And the NBA has expanded the use of coaches' challenges. I don't know if you saw this, pro, but this came up, I think, in was it the Phoenix, Minnesota series? I think it was, where there was an out-of-bounds call that got coaches challenged late in the game that the refs got wrong, and they had to overturn it. But when you looked at the replay, the player was fouled before it went out of bounds. He got his arm chopped, so it was off him, but he got his arm chopped clearly. So they've now expanded the use of the coaches challenge, pro, that on out of bounds, those fouls can actually be called. So if you go to review and it is off you, but you were fouled, that's why the ball went out of bounds. I think that's a good one. I like that because I think I watched that game and I think it cost Phoenix the game, I believe. I think it was that series. And it cost Phoenix a game because the ball went out of bounds. It was late game possession. They don't come up with the ball. Other team comes down and scores, they win the game. So I like this one, bro.
Yeah, I think it depends on which team you're rooting for and how it affects you, for sure. If you're rooting for the team that fouled the guy or not fouled the guy, it has a lot to do with that. But yeah, I think it's good. Look, if you're going to try to get the play right, if you're going to try to get the play right, that's what you're trying to do. Number one, you don't want to work around rules and things like that. I think if you're trying to get the play call right, as far as the foul or no foul or just get it right, I think this is the best way to do it. again, it depends on which side you're on, but I do think if you want to be fair with this, if you're trying to use this coach's challenge to make the right call, I think this is definitely something that puts them in the right position.
And it doesn't really change the length of the review. So that's the main thing. You don't want stoppages now taking 4 or 5 minutes. I think it's pretty easy to see, it's out of bounds off them. Oh, he was fouled. Foul. That's it. So I like it. I think it's a good thing. D Rose retires, 15 seasons pro, unbelievable career. Obviously I wouldn't say cut short, prime cut short by the injury. Still played 15 seasons and grinded his way as a veteran leader on multiple teams. But I remember I was in Milwaukee when he was coming up into that really 2-3 year run where he was just really, really good. And he was tough. Like there was just not much you could do. He had a stronger body than almost every guard in the league. His athleticism was he was top 1% in the league, and he was finding his shot and putting it all together. And he was a beast. They put you in a lot of tricky situations where he was going downhill on that big and going through your pick and roll. So great career, one of the most dynamic players in his prime, probably one of the all-time greatest runs that year he won MVP, that one small sample size, but he was tough, bro.
Yeah, I watched him in high school. I was working for Tim Grover when he was coming up in high school at Simeon High in Chicago. And I watched him play against Oak Hill Academy, and I was like, wow. And again, he just glided by people. And my question was, is he explosive enough? Not the dunks and things, because you knew he could do that, but is he explosive enough? Is he explosive enough? Even at Memphis, I didn't see that, and I was a little questioning that a little bit. I'm like, is he going to be able to just blow by people like they're not even there? And then, Chicago drafts him, and, at the time, Tim Grover had season tickets, so we would go to every Bulls game, and I watched his first home game, and I was like, one possession, you're like, holy shit. This isn't human what this guy can do as far as getting in the paint, finishing, controlling the game. His shooting got better, but Bogues, I mean, you don't see this in most players where, I remember where I was when he got hurt. I was watching the game at our facility in Chicago. And that was the one thing that people worried about, the start and stop, sort of what Ja Morant's going through, with his injury stuff, because he's so explosive and there's so much power and strength going into his stops. And, he just sort of lost where he was as far as athleticism and things. And when he was when he got traded and, I think he went away from his team, he was going through some, I would say depression in the sense that like just your basketball depression about not being where he was. And he sort of found himself again and then, prolonged his career. And he had some really effective seasons after the injury. But man, I'll tell you what, he was a quiet guy. He didn't say a lot. He just carried his business. He worked hard in the off season. I don't think he got in much trouble. You didn't really hear about that much. He made that huge run when they had like Luol Deng, him, Joakim Noah, and they, Miami that year. I think they sent it to like 6 games or 7 games. And,
6 I think it went 6 or 7. He hit that buzzer beater.
Yeah. I was there. Yeah. I was there in that last game. And finally, like, Miami just put LeBron on him and they just swallowed him up. And that's when LeBron was in his prime, especially defensively. But I'll tell you what, there wasn't a player that really dominated the game like that in his type of body and position. And he had a juggernaut of 2 or 3 years. I think 1 MVP, and you were expecting him to do great things, and he did in his own way. But you're right, his prime did get cut short for sure.
Yeah, I remember playing the Bulls during that run in Milwaukee, and we were up. I think going in the fourth, we were up 10 or 15. Had full control of the game, and I think it was the MVP year. And he just flicked a switch. I think he scored 20 in the fourth, and just went on this crazy run. And then, when you play that game, Milwaukee, for those not familiar, Chicago is a 70, 80-minute drive. You just heard all the Bulls fans erupt in our own arena because he just went off, and I just remember like you're just like, wow, this guy's legit. Like he looked like he wasn't really having a game. I don't know what he had at fourth, maybe 10 points. Kind of wasn't really involved, and then just bang, 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 bang. Which like, holy shit, where's our lead gone? And just but he did it in such a quick batch. And yeah, he was fun to watch, fun to play against. He was kind of scary when he was coming down the lane if you're a big guy, because he could just get up so quick and so high. I remember that, a bunch of his in-game dunks were phenomenal. So I wish him all the best in retirement. Small one, PJ Tucker has been told to remain away from the Clippers. He got sent home last season. He's just on $11.5 million this season. So I'm kind of intrigued as to why they didn't get to a buyout this offseason if this was going to be the case. But nonetheless, we'll see where he ends up. He's towards the end of his tether, but I would assume he'll have a buyout soon and probably join a veteran team to try and top up for a championship. Give us a probe on Woj retires, gone away from reporting. He was, one of the all-time greats as far as getting the news before even the NBA would announce it at times, infamously announcing draft picks before before the commissioner would even announce them. I read a little bit about it. I think a big part, I think a lot has to be said to screen time. Really do. I think the job that he's in, he would have to be on his phone 18, 19, 20 hours a day, to get the amount of scoops that he got out real time. That's a brutal industry, because if you don't get it out as soon as you get it, someone else is going to get it. I think screen time, we've come to learn that, it's a thing that you want to do a little bit. You don't want to do a lot. You don't want to be on your screen for 15 hours a day. And I think that affected him by the sounds of his retirement, being away from family, not having a normal life, being up. You probably attest to this, random crazy hours to get these scoops. So when the East Coast wakes up in the morning, you want to make sure that it's on the wire straight away, beating other agent, other people out that are getting it from agents. So one of the best of all time. But what do you have for us, Pro? Are you guys going to be singing Kumbaya somewhere and hanging out and having coffees?
Well, Bogues, with him, it's interesting. First of all, knowing him better than sort of most people, he had a love affair for St. Bonaventure basketball that's unmatched. Met his wife there, loved it. You could talk history program, always wanted, he would commute to games when he was at Yahoo, and he probably found himself at some games, not as many when he was at ESPN, but, he has a deep love for that school and that basketball program. It just means a lot to him. I think, without knowing anything, and I haven't really talked to him about it, but the media has changed as far as how things are done. It's more breaking stories, breaking stories and who's getting drafted, who's getting fired, who's getting traded. And, if you watched him, if you read his stuff before he joined ESPN, he would write, he's a tremendous writer. And I think that
articles, right? It wasn't just, just news.
He there's a lot of help in that too. Trying to, he always wrote about the underdog and always tried to help people. And I think that he's made enough money. I mean, I don't know, without being his tax guy, I would assume that he's made north of $20 million now at ESPN through all his deals, right? He doesn't live high on the hog. He's a normal guy. He's got a family, 2 kids. And I think that, he's made enough money. He doesn't have to work a day in his life. And he could now just help, in that. Now, the funny thing is, you say about the screen time and things, that role that he's in, GM, I mean, that's not a role that you're 3 hours a day and you're out. It's not like being an NBA GM. I mean, you're constantly recruiting, especially the transfer portal time. Now, it's not 12 months a year like that, where it's a lot, but especially in recruiting season, you're on the phone constantly, NIL. But I think what he does in this Bogues is, first of all, with his network of people that he knows, fundraising, I guarantee you it's probably going to go 7, 8, 9, 10 times for what they had NIL wise than before he got there. He can open up doors that no one else can. And then as far as the fundraising, and then if you're a player that you're considering, say, Virginia Tech or St. Bonaventure, and the money's a little bit close, well, where would you want to go to school? Would you want to go to Virginia Tech? Yeah, you play in the ACC. or you want to play with the GM could get on the phone and get you workouts for 27 teams when you're going through your pre-draft and open up a lot more doors than anyone else can for you. So it'll be an interesting dynamic as far as their recruiting and how they get players and what there's. But I do think this. I think he really likes helping people. There's a lot of times where he donated, countless money and funds to like high school writing programs and things like that. He loves helping people, even though that people thought he was like a monster and vampire, how he got his stories and this and that. I get all that. But I think that this allows him to go back to a place that, he loves and wants to help. And this position, unlike just being at ESPN where you're just breaking stories, you're actually helping people a lot more, in my opinion, than he did at that spot. Plus, he made all the money that he wants to make, that he need. Of course, like when you're talking on the NBA player front, when you're leaving $50 million on the table or whatever, and he left a lot of money on the table there. But I think that, look, he could always go back to that. But I think that this is an interesting deal for St. Bonaventure, and it's a great get for them as far as a recruiting tool. But for him, he could just sort of slow it down a little bit, enjoy his life, and try to help a program that he really has a lot of admiration for.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, and it's a fair point on that program is going to completely flip on its head. I think it's going to open up a lot of different doors for, like you said, fundraising. I also heard, I'm not sure if this is right, but I'm pretty sure it is. I spoke to a coach over in the college system that the NIL deals now, there's a percentage of their TV deal they can put towards it that's been negotiated now, which is wild because some of these schools have some of these schools have $1 billion deals, TV deals.
There's a revenue sharing now, Bogues.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that's going on in the NIL space. Like one is revenue sharing, where the Power Fives, you got to put up 20 million, I believe, 20 million in this pot, and then there's some type of revenue sharing that goes on with that. But then there's an other revenue type share that you could have. So there's all this money that's coming into players. It's ridiculous. I was at a high school game in Dallas last week, and there was like $700,000 minimum in NIL deals, and for different Power Fives that they have already signed their guys for next year, that their kids that are playing. And to be honest with you, I thought they overpaid by about $680,000. That's just my opinion. But this NIL thing is very interesting. How how much money? Because again, if St. Bonaventure has, these kids, it's sort of like shoe company deals. Like a guy's been sponsored. I remember working with a guy that was sponsored by Adidas since he was 10 years old. And then when it's time to go to the NBA draft, it was like, well, where do you want to, you're going to go to Adidas because you've been with them since you're 10. He goes, no, whoever gives me the most money. So now you're seeing a lot more parity with this stuff, where if a guy's getting recruited by the ACC or Big East, but that school is coming up with $800,000, and then St. Bonaventure could come up with 1.4 million. They're going to probably go. Now, that place is a little tough. It's like almost in Canada. I've driven there from Boston when I scouted with the Celtics. It's up there, man. It's up there. You're in a different country, it seems like, but they're going to have a lot more resources. So it's interesting with the whole recruiting deal, and where guys go. Are you going to go for exposure? Are you going to go for the coach? Or are you just going to take the money? In most of these cases, they're going to go with the money, especially because the agents that are representing them, they got no certification process at all. I mean, no offense, but Trent could represent $8 million in NIL next year, have no experience in it, and take upwards of 20% of that $8 million. So it's an interesting.
It's a wild west until it gets some sort of legislation,
regulation.
Regulation. Yeah, you hate to see regulation, but these are the kind of. And these are where all the snakes come out, because they'll make their money in that first 5 years when there's no regulation, and then there'll be all these rules, and then all these other agents that try to jump on the bandwagon late. They're like, oh shit, I can't make
Trent's on orbits, by the way, right now, trying to book a flight to Duke to try to get Cooper Flag.
But yeah, anyway, when I heard the revenue sharing deal on TV deals going towards NIL up to 20%, some of these programs, that's a lot of money. So we'll be interested to see where that all goes. Dante X, some small injury just for the Australian NBA players. He's hurt his wrist. It says out indefinitely. So I know he's had issues with his finger. I hope it's not the same hand. But you hope that he doesn't catch that injury bug. He's had some issues previously with injuries, and you hate to see it. Just the way he plays, a great spirit out there. So hopefully he can get all healthy. The Lakers, they're groundbreaking, just changing the guard with the way they go about business over there in Los Angeles, pro. Not
Sure.
only do they have music at their practice facility now, pro, they have a live in-house DJ during practice to
Yeah. I already
spin
named him. It's DJ Playing. DJ Playing. So yeah, that's what he's going to be called.
Pro, come on, man. Have you ever seen this? Is like, look, I tweeted about it and people are like, oh, yeah, what do you hate? Why? Because it's LeBron's idea. What do you have against music? I'm like, I've got no issue with music. I love having. I think there's actually stuff. There's studies done that smart coaches have gone and talked to other coaches. We brought music in with Steve Kerr for warm-ups. It kind of triggers your brain that this is warm-up, get focused. Love music around sport. It's very, very important. A DJ in practice is just taking the absolute piss in my opinion, pro. That's Australian it's an absolute joke. Like, I don't understand it, but it's groundbreaking, pro. I also heard that the LA Clippers have installed a stripper pole for James Harden in the corner of their practice facility. I haven't confirmed that yet, but that's the rumor with the Clippers. They're trying to one up the Los Angeles Lakers and have the most cringeworthy things in their practice facility.
It says "Praise God" on the pole, though. It has to say "Praise God."
I found Jesus in the off season.
Yeah, I did.
But yeah, anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because I saw it and I was like, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was I thought I was getting done like pro usually does with like ESPN Sports or something.
Central, Central, NBA Central,
NBL Central. And it was legit. So I don't know, man. Like I'm getting old. I'm clearly getting old because I think it's hilarious. They just got some dude standing in the corner of your facility just spinning tracks. To me, or they don't spin tracks these days. My bad. They plug in the USB stick and just pretend like you're spinning tracks.
Bogues, the game obviously is changing. It's getting younger and things like that. But at some point, you got to be like, look, this is a professional sport, and yeah, the music does help and all that stuff, warm ups. But a DJ, I mean, come on, there's got to be a professionalism part to this. You want to have a DJ. Now, I think Minnesota was the first team I've ever seen that had a DJ during warmups. Like pregame.
Cool, no problem.
Like that.
There's fans there, like you're trying to create a vibe. I get that. Practice.
That stuff. Practice. Come on. I mean, I don't know, man. It just.
Did you hear some of the reasoning? Like, they interviewed them, they had media after training, and like D-Lo and a couple of players were saying that it was helping them like prepare for the NBA games because like all the stadiums have like DJs and stuff, so they're trying to create like an arena like environment was the reasoning behind it. So does that ease it at all, or is it still dumb as hell?
Still cringes.
Well, what they should have done, because they should have started it halfway through practice, because those fans don't show up till halftime anyway. But I don't understand. Yeah, I mean,
let's get the Showtime girls there too. Then let's get some fans that talk shit to you that you'll try to get red carded and thrown out of the building. What else?
They should just invite people. Like they should invite people to come in,
kind of like a game,
just like a game. I mean, they need to. Maybe fans pay $5 a piece. They're going to need a lot more revenue now. The Clippers got that big new building, so maybe they can make a few bucks, but. Yeah, I mean, why not just invite people in then? Hey, look, I don't care. Do what they want. They can invite the Pope if they want. There's still going to be a play-in team. It doesn't really matter. But still, it's an interesting deal.
Oh, it's not a good start. In my opinion, if I'm looking at it from outside looking in, started JJ Redick's coaching career and he's been told we're putting a DJ in the facility and he just said, yeah, no worries, all good. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Not for me, but we'll see how they go. We'll see if DJ playing runs true, but we probably both have them playing or lower with that roster. Yeah. But we'll see where that all ends up. What else we have? Vince Carter getting his jersey retired. Do you agree with that one, pro? In Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, again, another guy that had injury that probably could have been a lot better throughout his career if he didn't get hurt. You go to San Antonio and Avery Johnson and Bruce Bowen has their numbers retired for good reason. He part of their run and everything. I mean, early history, I think Vince Carter was a big part of, Toronto's history. McGrady was too. I don't know if McGrady was there long enough, but
no,
Vince Carter had Vince had a decent run there early, but he just got hurt. So
Vince was an icon though. Even growing up in
Yeah.
Australia, like that dunk contest,
Oof.
iconic. And he was.
You should have seen him.
A legit price of admission player. No matter if they were the worst team in the league, you would go there to pay to watch him try to dunk on someone. So I think it's rare you see guys that haven't had a chip or a lot of success with an organization. He probably deserves it. Early in their start as well was the one guy they finally got that was a wow factor, and he was fun to watch, man. So I know we value winning, but I think they were competitive with him too. They ran into Allen Iverson's sixes a number of years that got him out, but he was fun to watch. So I think it's deserved.
Yeah, him and Kobe were probably one of the most exciting high school players I've ever seen, and coached against. And I remember coaching against him in AAU, and that guy was a absolute problem. I mean, his athleticism, his size, he was an absolute juggernaut in high school. And then in college, he was very good for North Carolina, and then had some success. And I remember when I just got to Boston in like 03, 04. He started having really bad knee trouble, and couldn't really get that thing right. And then he got it right. He had some good years, later in his career. But yeah, I think he deserves it. I think especially early, like you said, one of the first players they got that was an absolute juggernaut, and I think that that's deserved. That's deserved for him. So
played 20.
Good for him,
seasons?
man.
21 seasons. So,
yeah.
21
we had him in
seasons,
Dallas. But he was in Dallas my first couple of years, and he's an absolute pro, great dude. Just a good guy and knows the game, articulate. Not just a dunker. He sort of knew the game. You could talk to him about anything like that. He was an interesting guy and a really good person. So I'm happy for him. He's great.
You both agree that he should be retired by Toronto, but the Nets are also retiring his jersey this year.
Oh, they really?
Yes. So he's
I didn't know that.
both the Nets and the Raptors will be retiring his jersey. So you kind of spoke like I agree. Toronto icon has to be.
Nets,
but
no.
What
Not
about
for
the
me.
Nets?
They didn't. He wasn't on the finals team. No, he came after, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think he was.
I think he was there. No, he was traded. If I'm not mistaken, if I'm not mistaken, I think Devin Harris was in that trade.
No. He was still in Toronto. He was still in Toronto. I believe he was still in Toronto when New Jersey played the Lakers in that final series.
Yeah, because remember I told you when I got to Boston, he started having that problem with Toronto. And with his knee.
He was there for 5 seasons, 2009.
He was solid, but I don't think that one. I think Toronto iconic 15 jersey. Yeah, I think that one definitely worked out. Here's one for you though, pro. Tony Allen's getting his jersey retired. Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, I heard they're giving out free dental exams outside, during that time for his little stage deal with the NBA insurance scam that he had. So, yeah, it's that. Look, I mean, for Tony Allen, again, it's like the Bruce Bowen factor. I mean, look, they didn't win any championships, but they were close a couple.
You give it to a Bruce Bowen if you've won a championship. You give it to a Tony Allen if you won a championship. I know the junkyard, what do they grit and grind and all that kind of. He was the. But come on, man! Like that just shows me that franchise hasn't had a lot of success. If you're retiring his jersey, no offense to him, he played hard, he was a great defender, but I just don't think it is.
And don't forget there, Bogues, like with Bowen, because I remember Bowen was the first NBA player I ever worked out when he was in Boston. He went to Miami, Boston stole him from Miami, and then he went to Chicago for a year or two after Boston, and then went to San Antonio after that. I believe Milwaukee, maybe. No, that was Milwaukee.
He was a journeyman.
But he was a
journeyman, yeah.
Yeah, but he was in San Antonio for a while, and then they started winning championships and stuff. And he was a big part of that. So he was there for a long time. Tony Allen was, he was Boston. We drafted him, I think, in 2004 in Boston, and did his thing with Tibbs, and those guys in the championship with Doc. And then his last few years, I think he had like 3. I don't know how many years, Trent, maybe 5 in Memphis.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. In Memphis, 4 or 5. He had a couple of all defensive years, but
so he was there from 2010, 11 till 2016, 17. So what's that one?
Oh wow, 6, 7.
Yeah, 7 years. Yeah.
I don't know, Bogues.
Tough one.
Everyone's
I think it was. I saw it and I was like, okay, like cool, but I think it's a franchise that hasn't had a lot of success. They got to celebrate something because I think you give it to him. Like if he's part of a championship team, I get it, I understand it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they ran into us. They probably were one of the championship favorites coming into that playoff series.
Trent, 2 Western Conference Finals he was in.
2 Western
Yeah.
Conference Finals.
Us and OKC, yeah.
6-time member of the NBA All-Defensive Team, including 3 first-team selections.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those
Okay.
were with Memphis, so all of them.
I don't know.
Because he had one with Boston too, I think. But anyway. But yeah, an interesting one. It's a debatable one. You know, if you're a Memphis fan, you love him. He was a big part of the defensive runs. But if I'm looking at it as a fan, I probably don't think
He had
makes
one
sense.
defensive second team with Boston. The remaining 5 were all in Memphis.
Okay, yeah, so it makes sense. But anyway, I regress. We'll move on. We'll finish off with a bit of WNBA Pro. New franchise coming in Portland, 2026, I believe it is. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Caitlyn Clark, 1 vote shy of unanimous Rookie of the Year. There's an argument to be had, Pro. Can we find out who that one was? Because
Kendrick Perkins, probably.
yeah. Like that one. That's just bonkers. Like you cannot. I mean, breaking all kinds of records. Started slow, but really turned it up towards the end of the season. So don't know how you don't vote for that. I do know how you don't vote for that. You probably buy into all the media rhetoric. And here's one for you. So we don't really have much stats to go through, but 17% of all flagrant fouls in the WNBA last season were on Caitlyn Clark. Albeit 80% of those were the Chicago Sky. But still pretty wild. Like you get 1 in 5 flagrants are coming towards one player. Your league has a bit of an issue if that's happening.
Bogues, I mean, we could spend 9 podcasts in a row talking about this whole weird deal that's happened with the whole Caitlyn Clark thing, and it's so stupid. You know, it's so stupid. The women in that league have to really stop being so petty and understanding that she's their golden ticket to make. You know, look, you want max contracts to be 7 figures. She's the only reason why they're going to be 7 figures. You know, there's a lot of players that go into that, no doubt about it, but she's the star power with it. And not to say that the rest of the league is invaluable and the all-stars and the great players aren't valuable, no doubt about it. But they've had great players for 25 years, and their money's very minimal, and they're minimal only because the NBA puts in their money. But this one with Caitlyn just brings that to another level. And for some of the players in that league, not all, but some, to be as petty as, you know, as they're being and doing some of this stuff, not only that, but media and social media and all this stuff. It's just a very interesting phenomenon that should be studied for years. And if, you know, I don't care, you put the person I hate the most in life, and if they're the reason why I can make $1 million a year, let that person do what they got to do. And yeah, sign me up. If Trent wants to, you know, if Trent's going to be that person who's making me $1 million, all the stuff that I say behind Trent's back, I'm not going to, I'll let it go. I'll let it go. So no, seriously though. I mean, it's interesting, man. You just watch this whole phenomenon about, you know, look, she's not a perfect player. She bitches at every fucking call. You know, I hate that shit, you know, and all that stuff. She's fiery and all that, but she's a great player. And what she's bringing for jersey sales and ticket sales and sponsorships, which I don't even think Nike has made a commercial for yet or acknowledged that she won Rookie of the Year, which is another thing that we need to talk about at some point. I mean, it's just a whole shit show wrapped in a circus.
It's a golden goose, like you said. You just hope that they continue to realize that they need to treat her that way. You know, she's LeBron of their league. And
no doubt.
He's a gun and he's a price of admission player, but it's, you know, hopefully now her rookie initiation is done and they can all get, you know, put behind her and they can all move on and it can lift the whole league up together. Because like we all know, the WNBA has had its issues. It still has its issues today financially. You've got a golden ticket right now to try to stem those woes and get it close to even and hopefully heavily profitable in the future. And you just got to stop shitting on that. And just finally, on a sad note, Dikembe Mutombo passes away, Pro. An NBA icon. I got to play against him towards the end of his career. Wasn't moving as well. Gave him a few buckets, blocked a few of my shots. But he was with Houston towards the end of my career, so I got to be around him. He was a big human being, big, tall, long arms. Storied career. Obviously starting off in Denver for 5 years, off to Atlanta, Philly, and then New York, and finished his career backing up Yao Ming there in Houston. Multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards, career numbers of just under 10 points, 10 rebounds, and multiple blocks a night. But the finger wag is why he was iconic. I mean, he in the 90s, back when it was true center v center, David, Giants versus Giants, Mourning, Ewing, Dikembe, those battles, Shaq, they were fun to watch because they were going at each other, and he was infamous for just protecting that basket in games, no easy looks, wagging the finger. So much so they made that a technical foul for a number of years. I'm not sure when it came, how long it was implemented, but I know at one point in the 90s, pro, if he did the finger wag to a player, he got an instant technical foul, and they kind of turned. Then he started doing it to the crowd to kind of circumnavigate the technical foul. Then they put in a rule for that, and then they dragged it back because they realized that it was an awesome kind of signature move of his that the world knew. But a great human being, did a lot for his country, did a lot for people in the US, was a big contributor to malaria, helping with malaria and whatnot. So the basketball community loses a good one. Brain cancer, obviously, was battling it for a long, long time, but he is now in a better place and will always be remembered as an icon of this game.
Bogues, there's very few people in any sport or any walk of life that universally across the board people just adored as a great human being. There's not one person I ever come across in basketball that ever said a bad thing about Dikembe Mutombo. I remember one of my favorite teams of all time in college, and I hate college now, but back then I really enjoyed it, was that Georgetown team.
John Thompson.
Alonzo Mourning. Yeah, Alonzo Mourning and him in the front court. For some reason, he was older, but it was his first year at Georgetown, but he was like a sophomore. I don't know why, but he didn't play the year before anyway. It was him and Alonzo.
He was probably 31.
Yeah, he's probably older. He was probably older, no doubt about it. And they had a guy named Charles Smith, which is one of my favorite players of all time in college. And they were great. But going along his career, I mean, first of all, in Denver, he was a huge part of that organization, upsetting George Karl and the Seattle Supersonics early in his career. In the first round of the playoffs, one of the first 1-8 seeds, 8 to beat a 1 in the first round, I believe. But just what he meant for the game as far as how he changed that position. I mean, great shot blocker, great teammate. I remember when I was working for Grover, we had Jawan Howard as a client, and Jawan was at Houston, and he would just tell countless Dikembe Mutombo stories. And just how he's a great guy, always makes you laugh, always smiling, just a guy that you want to be around. Now, I think this is a great project for Trent. There's a big debate going right now about Jordan and him. Jordan claims that he dunked on Mutombo and gave him the finger wag. Now, there is a video of him dunking on Dikembe later in his career when Dikembe was in Atlanta, and he gave him the finger wag. But I think that was after they had that conversation. Nobody could find it, but Jordan swears there's a conversation. I'm almost positive that conversation was in The Last Dance. They were in the locker room talking about it. So I'd like to see one person come up with that video. I tried searching for a little bit, but I didn't.
That was the one that was actually Luke Longley. Shout out Luke Longley. Luke Longley got it in the post. They ran the triangle back cut. Jordan back cut, bounce pass. Dikembe got there kind of late, but jumped, dunked on him, right?
They say that was after that talk. So, he said earlier in his career, nobody could find the film. It could be MJ just talking, but it'll be interesting to see if that was real. But look, Dikembe, philanthropy, what he did raising money, building hospitals, what he did as a humanitarian, besides what he did as a basketball player. I mean, he put his money where his mouth was at the, after his post career. A lot of times there's people just do what they do and, just live in a mansion and just sort of not help anybody. He helped countless people and used every ounce of his resources to help others that was less fortunate. So, the basketball world and just our world in general lost a great man. And, there's not one person I could ever talk to that ever said a bad thing about Dikembe Mutombo. He's a beautiful human being.
All right, bro. We're going to log you off because we're going into NBL stuff now and don't want to put you to sleep.
Okay, so fact to fake.
What's your fact to fake news? Go.
Fact to fake news that DJ will still be in LA if past All-Star break if they're under 500.
Fact, he'll be gone. but he'll get the blame for any bad start, and they'll fire him before
DJ
Redick.
Westbrook. DJ
Yeah.
Westbrook.
Or maybe they'll need
Yeah.
3 DJs. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on? But
Yeah.
appreciate it, Pro. We're going to get into NBL right now, so we'll let you log off so you don't fall asleep through a league that you don't follow. But we will see you again. Enjoy freedom for 2 more weeks, Pro, and then we're back to weekly, all right?
I appreciate that, Bogues. Welcome back to the 21st century.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks. Enjoy your childhood home and that shower curtain.
I got a 5 a.m. Wake up. I got a 5 a.m. flight tomorrow. I'm not enjoying shit.
We'll get into some NBL now. It's been obviously 3 weeks. We just passed round 3 of the NBL season. A lot going on, but let's just touch on Hoopfest real quick, Trent. It was decent. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was poor. I think it was just decent. I think it was lost in the shuffle. The footy finals kind of starting. A lot going on. I think the NBL season was pushed earlier. I think the Blitz just was a couple of weeks before that. So it just didn't have the oomph that I think you would have liked it to have. Great idea, great concept. I'd like to see it maybe mid-season. I'd like to see it in the Christmas school holidays, January sometime, good weather. I also think, look, having it in Perth, I think their government fronted up the most money. I think East Coast would be better in a way because you can, whether it's in Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne or even Adelaide or even Tasmania, you can have people travel to it a bit more. It's a bit more accessible. I think Perth's can be the cost of an international flight sometimes on certain weekends. So, but they fronted up the money. They deserved it. I think it was a well-run event as far as I heard from people there. But yeah, it just kind of was interesting, just the timing of it. I just don't think it had the oomph just because there was a lot going on in Australia at that time.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, especially when you got all East Coast teams. Like it's going to be hard to fill seats because only team they're interested in over there are the Wildcats.
Yeah.
So when you've got like Melbourne, Tassie games and stuff like that, like to have a finals rematch in round 1, you'd expect that to be, filled out. Whereas it just wasn't. So yeah, I think you kind of nailed it on the head there around the timing and as well, just location wasn't optimal.
Yeah, and it's the first one they've done. Obviously, it's a copy of the Gather Round in AFL and whatever it's called in rugby league.
Magic Round.
Magic Round.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just the same kind of concept that try to have a celebration of the game, and I think it is in concept great. You had some under 18 stuff. WNBL was involved, but that was a miss because half the WNBL players hadn't even reported for camp yet because of the timing of it. So there was, the Sydney Flames, for instance, took mainly development players. We got something out of it. Our girls played very, very well. But I think that's why it's better to have it in a January bracket where it's school holidays. You're going to get people that are like, oh, it's a weekend of basketball. I'll go every day. Cool, no worries. And then everyone, your juniors are ready. Your WNBL season's in swing. NBL seasons, mid-season, and then you just do the same thing. I think it just becomes a much better run event that way.
Yeah, and timing-wise, like you could have the under-20 nationals there as well. If like in terms of the junior aspects, like that club championships is a brand new thing, and it's like you're not really actually seeing the top talent. Whereas January every year you got the 20s championships, so you could have 20s WNBL preseason and then round 1 or like round whatever of the NBL. So yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense.
Definitely makes more sense. And then just have it somewhere that's got I think Perth was a pretty good area to have it, but 2 different stadiums was kind of clunky. I think Sydney, not being biased, but Olympic Park would be a good area to have it because you could have everything centralised. I think Melbourne the same. You could have everything centralised in their Olympic Park region. Adelaide, I'm not too sure what's around the entertainment centre, but you want to have where you can have access for fans to walk around and do outdoor shooting bays and actually really celebrate the game where you don't have to get in the car and drive to different places. I think that kind of makes it a little clunky. And I know they had Challenge Stadium and Perth Arena, RAC Arena, because they had Sneaker Fest there and whatnot. So it kind of made it a little bit hard to get from one to the other. You had to kind of jump in your car a little bit and go down the road. But all in all, it's the first one. So it can only get better from here. Let's just hope it's done at a different time. This season so far, it's very hard to call. Still, I like to call it the honeymoon period. Not many teams have faced adversity yet, injuries, results. It hasn't really gone full swing yet. So besides Southeast Melbourne, so you don't really know where you're sitting yet. But the Breakers are, as current, the only undefeated team in the NBL. They have they're 2-0, of course, and they haven't played as many games as everyone else. So I'm being a little facetious here, but I think they'll be better than people gave them credit for. A lot of people had them last or towards the bottom. I think PJC will win them games off his own bat, a couple of games off his own bat. They do have a rookie head coach in this league and a guy who's still figuring things out. I think the US tour is going to hurt them. I think that's what's going to really hurt them. I think they're going to, hope they have no injuries. I don't like to see any teams, even teams that we're playing against. I love to see fit and healthy teams, mono. These US tours are notorious for injuries. These international tournaments are in the off season for a reason, and they're pushed out after professional seasons because of the travel's brutal. You need rest recovery. This is done in the middle of their season after playing 2 rounds. I just think it's going to be a net negative for them for their NBL season. They might see it as a win marketing wise, obviously going over playing in the NBA. They then have signed Taco Fall to play on their roster for 2 or 3 games, which by all reports they're saying they have no interest of keeping him long term. That's an interesting one. You got I think Dane Pennell's there trying to get back up. I mean, does it take his minutes as your backup? Try to get him it's really clunky, but I think the US tour will not be great for them.
No, and their 2 wins are like 2 3-point wins against the Bullets and Phoenix.
Yeah.
So I don't read into that too much. Like you said, the honeymoon period, I still expect them to be towards the bottom of the table. Like
they will.
I can't see them making the 6, but I mean, yeah, like to have the easier schedule to start, then go on a US trip where you're messing up your rotation, your minutes, and like getting continuity with bringing in random people. And then you're going to get thrown in the deep end with no rest against teams that have played 4, 5, 6 games together already. It's a recipe for disaster, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they'll be in the 6. I just don't think they'll be dead last. I think they'll be they'll be somewhere in between there.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think PJC is a tough input. I think he'll have 2 or 3 games where he'll have 30 and they'll steal victories. Illawarra looking very good, second at the moment. Tatum's just done a fantastic job with this group. I mean, they have a belief that they can win games, which you haven't really seen the last 4 or 5 years. Or when Gorge was there, they were in the mix, but I'd say 2 to 3 years. They just look like they're together. They look well organized. They're well coached. So I believe they're pretty easily a top 4 lock. I think they'll continue to be dominant throughout the season. They could potentially be number 1 at season's end with the way they're playing, but I have them somewhere in the top 4.
Yeah, for sure. I see them at 2-3. I think their big surprise, Trey Kell. Like, I think he was a bit of an unknown factor after the year with the 36ers previously. And then he was at Southeast before that. And so, like, just 2 bad organizations. So to see him now being maximized as a player, like, it kind of takes that load off Harvey at times because he can come down and just get them 4 or 5 straight buckets. And and then you combine that with Days, Froles, and Harvey is like kind of like when they really need like clutch buckets, Harvey's that guy. Like they almost beat who they have a close one with. Adelaide.
Yeah.
Just off Harvey had 2 wide open shots that he didn't make.
Yeah.
So I think for them, Trey Kell coming in and doing what he's doing, Dave O'Hickey has ascended into like a really good role player. What he can produce now consistently on the defensive and offensive end is great for them. Ulbrich,
great energy off the bench,
amazing forward, great
Ronnie's
footwork.
been good for him,
yeah. So I just think, I completely agree. I reckon they're poised to get a 2nd or a 3rd seed this year.
Yeah, and just amazing with Trey Kell. It's amazing what a change of scenery does as well. Like he looked a shell of himself at times. I think Southeast Melbourne he was better than Adelaide, but had some injuries. And Adelaide, looked the iota of himself. And now he's very, very consistent, very good at picking when to go and when to distribute. He'll have high assist games. I like his game. So great pickup for them. And like I said, it change of scenery, change of coach, completely different player. So good on them. Sydney, inconsistent basketball for us to start. We're probably lucky to be 3-1, to be quite honest with you. Our bench still not fluid. Figuring out that rotation of what we do with our bench has been a clear disparity between even just the plus minus. You look at the plus minus, and our starters generally have been plus 20, plus 30 in games, and our bench has been minus 20, and we can't afford to have that. We need some more consistency for when our starters start off games. Even Brisbane a couple of nights ago, 15-4, I think it was. Brisbane called a timeout, and it was 17-15 for Brisbane with the bench coming in. So we know it. We're trying to find it. Gorge is trying to find combinations, so much so that Tyler Robertson got his first big minutes of the season and had a really good impact. So trying different things, different combinations, it's just going to be a matter of time. We've got some players struggling. Liafa's struggling to find his shot a little bit, so we're going to get him going. Luke Pepe was struggling to find his shot previous game against Brisbane, and then all of a sudden goes bang, bang, bang. So he's now. So it's a matter of figuring it out. We've got a very deep roster, which has been the news for everyone. Everyone's been reporting on how deep we are. That can be good and bad. We're going to have guys that fall out of rotations at times that are probably capable of playing 20 minutes elsewhere. So they got to figure it out. But I think we're okay. We're not panicking by any means, but we are aware that we're likely to be 3-1 at the moment. And I think we need to understand that teams are seeing us as the championship favourites and coming out to hit us. Xavier Cooks has been elite from the start of the season. Sean White, he's a former MVP, who'd be up there as well in votes right now. Just does everything. Completely controlled the tempo of the game in Brisbane a couple of nights ago. Rebounds the ball at a high level. He's a menace going downhill. Great offensive rebounder, shooting the ball real well this season. I mean, 2 for 2 from 3. I don't think we're going to see a steady diet of him hoisting up 2 or 3 threes a game, but teams are daring him to shoot it, and I don't mind him taking 1 or 2 of those a game. But more importantly, from the free throw line, I don't know the numbers in front of me, but I'm guessing he's at 70-80% for the season, which, career 50% free throw shooter. So makes a huge difference for his game, putting pressure. And I just want to mention Bull Call is a menace at the defensive end. I mean, he is just an absolute. I mean, we try to talk to him a little bit about. He picked up a couple of easy fouls. Just play without foul. He's up and in. He has 2 fouls in the first quarter. He's up and in. He's making. There's an argument to be said that he's daring the referee. Give me my third. Or I've got 4 in the fourth quarter. Give me my 4. I dare you. But he's up and in, and you just see these imports. He usually gets the imports or their best player, and they don't want it. They don't want anything to do with it. He's picking you up right at the point of you getting the ball. And he's turning you, he's physical, he's up and in, they're trying to get fouls, and so much so they've started to just throw the ball to their 2 guard or their big and just run down the court to get away from this guy. And then off the ball, he's up and in and he's beating you up, and unbelievable defender. So I've really enjoyed watching the Kings. What are your observations so far?
I think you just kind of look back in terms of that first championship and the start you guys had with the roster you had, to be 3-1, you've had probably one of the tougher schedules than most of the teams, going against Adelaide, got a big win in Perth by 1 point. Illawarra was a close game, kind of threw it away, but to see them in Brisbane and see them kind of clicking at that level where they can just put 15 to 20 points on the board so quickly, especially with the way Cole can shoot it. And didn't really mention Jalen Adams has been balling. First 3-4 games of this season, him and Zave are going to be fighting for the MVP spot if you guys can clinch that first seed. So, I mean, the dynamic, I think, between Tui and Jalen's a super interesting one as well, because they're just both so elite. Jalen came into the game against Brisbane, looked elite on the defensive end, just being a disruptor and getting past the lanes, but so was Tui. And then Tui's development of his 3-point shot has completely.
It's his whole offensive game.
Yeah,
I mean, he's shooting the Dirk fadeaways, he's putting it on the floor.
Exactly.
He's you can tell he's spent the whole off season in the gym working on his craft. And I think, we talk about Rocco. I think right now, Tui's a better prospect today.
Yeah.
Where Rocco goes, who knows? He's obviously 7'3", long arms, much younger. But right now, I think Tui's kind of surpassed. As far as right now today. Now that can change in 12 months, 18 months, but you can clearly see that Tui's taken a step from last season.
Yeah.
Rocco, I think he's getting there, but I think it's a slower step.
Yeah.
The improvement from last season to this season, it's there. But Tui, you're like, holy shit! He's gone from, where he was in a rut, couldn't make a shot, wasn't aggressive, couldn't find his spots, and now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this guy's elite, and defensively. He can play basically from the 2 to the 4.
Yeah.
He's multi-dimensional, can play three spots on the floor. So that helps our depth where we can play guys in multiple spots. But looking forward to seeing how they go. Another couple of big games coming up, and I think Adelaide on Friday at time of recording will be a big one. Cairns are 4th at the moment. Surprise team for everyone so far. Look, I'm going to be honest, I didn't have them in the 6th, but I didn't have them last. I knew that 40's teams, he's going to use that. Everyone's picked us last or second last. It's going to be the talk of the town for their locker room. But they're going to play. They always play hard. And my worry is everyone thinks, we're just going to go to Cairns and get a win. You won't. You're not just going to go to Cairns and get a win. They're going to surprise. If you don't come and play hard, they'll beat you. And I think they actually have some good pieces. I think Edwards gun import, playing really well, has some shit to him. I love the way he plays. Up and in, talking shit. I love imports that give a shit. Like, there's a lot of imports that come over here that are uber talented but aren't invested. You can tell they're not invested in the team. Oh, it's a 1 year stopover. I'll get my money here and go to China. You can tell he cares. He gives a shit. They're hard to find.
Yeah.
So I like that, and I think they'll surprise some people. They might even scrape in that 5-6 spot. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but if I'm being honest, before the season I had them out of the 6, but not last. I thought 7-8 would be where they sit, and they've been super impressive so far.
Yeah, I have the same. I completely agree. Like, I think they'll be fighting for that six playing spot, and I think it'll be streaky. Like, Taron Armstrong, their point guard, at times looks super elite, but he's just like still young, super inconsistent at times, especially with his shot. Like, if his shot's going, he's super elite because then he can start coming down, hesitate.
Really well,
exactly. But yeah, that Edwards guy has been super elite for them. Wardenberg, super elite, big for them. And that Groves guy, that other import, plays with such energy. Like, he just kind of embodies that kind of 40 attitude. So yeah, I think they won't be an easy beat. But yeah, I don't know if they'll be like getting in that 5-6 spot. It just, yeah.
But they can get it up in a hurry. They play a fast tempo and they guard. So whenever you do those things, you can kind of mitigate your depth and talent. If they have an injury too, it might cost them, and I think they'll free fall if an Edwards goes down, God forbid. But I think they're not one of those teams where you can just box tick, even though they're in the bottom half of the league, in my opinion. Melbourne 5th at the moment, good solid veteran group. I mean, they're going to notch up wins. I think they're a top 4 chance. They just have to stay healthy. I think age is going to be an issue for them eventually. If they have an injury, their age. I think scoring might be a problem at times. If CG doesn't have it going, they struggle to find buckets at times, but they mitigate that. They're super solid defensively, especially with Jack White in that lineup now. Jack White, Marcus Lee with Ely and Delhi, like absolute nightmare defensively. Like, they can just actually squeeze the life out of you, and I think that's what they butter their bread with. But I think offense in a close playoff series, which you saw at times last season, they dry up offensively, and they can only rely on defensive stops for so long until McVay hits a big 3 or someone, and that's what we saw last season. But I think they'll be in the top 4 mix.
Yeah, I agree. I just think their lack of depth at the 5 spot is their big kind of weakness this season. You see them, especially with Rob and Marcus, in those pick and roll situations. They struggle defensively, and it's where they get like exposed at times, because they've had like big swing games where they've won games by 30, but then have been pumped by 30 as well. So I completely agree. They'll be a top 4 team, but once it gets to those like finals playoffs games, I don't see them winning a series, like a 5-game series.
Yeah, unless they make a change maybe throughout the season. Adelaide in 6th at the moment after an 0-2 start. They bounce back to go 2-2, and for me, that's a huge glaring improvement. Adelaide historically, the example would be the Illawarra game that they just won. They were up all game, and then to start the 4th, they got down 6 or 7 early. Trey Cal hit back-to-back threes. The Adelaide of old would have just crumbled and lost that by 20. So it's I know I'm on Adelaide and I like to banter with them and get after them a little bit, but credit to them that's 0-2 start. They would have been 1-3, 0-4, and then already talking about, is this the right coach? Is this they grinded it out, which was impressive for me to see. So look, I think they have one of the most talented rosters in the NBL, in my opinion. Can they finally make the playoffs is the question. Montrez Harrell, he's not everyone's cup of tea. And even I laugh like at some of his antics and the way he goes about things. Even when I played against him, we got into it. We're talking shit to each other when he was with the Clippers. But the league needs people like that. He's a villain. If he's not on your team, you hate him. If he's on your team, you love him. If he's not on your team, you go on a watch to hate him. So I think you need those villains, and they've got a perfect natural one. It's not an NBL orchestrated villain that sometimes the NBL tries to overemphasize and I guess Hollywood these kind of things. It's a natural guy you've got. What do they do with Martin? He's reportedly getting close. I think they can keep both. I think they can. They have an import spot open. For those not aware, Harrell's an injury replacement for Martin. I believe they can take him off the injury replacement and put him in as an import. Issue being it would absolutely hurt them cap-wise. It will then take DJ or Humphreys, but I think DJ is earning a little bit less than Humphreys. It would take DJ off the marquee spot, opens his salary up to go full threshold on the cap. So they get it. Obviously, DJ is discounted because the marquee rule, for those not aware, is up to a certain point. I think it's 250, 300K hits the cap. The rest you pay over that doesn't hit your cap, so it helps your cap. But you can do 2 marquees and 2 imports. You can do 3 marquees and 1 import, vice versa. It's grouped in 4s. So if you bring in Harrell, you've then got an odd man out there and you have to figure out what you're going to do. So because you've got Harrell, Trez, and the guard, Kendrick, and then you got DJ and Humphreys, so it'll hurt their cap. So I've been very interested to see what they do, but they finally started Humphreys and Harrell together, and as much as that's anti the way the game's played these days, in FIBA it works. You can do it. You can do it in stretches, and they were 2 big bodies. Trez got some huge offensive boards in that game, so I like where they're at. I'm nervous about this one. I think this is going to be a big, tough game. We know the DJ rivalry with Sydney after leaving, all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be a lot to like about watching this game this weekend. What are your thoughts about Adelaide?
I think they're going to run into the same problem you guys are going to run into in terms of there's not enough ball. I saw Humphreys at times not
first couple of games.
Yeah, not happy.
You see the photo of him sitting with basically off the bench.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
That even just watching the games, you can see his body language. You can see he gets frustrated at times when he doesn't get those post up opportunities. And with DJ and Kendrick, it's just going up.
And there's going to be times where they get stuck in that box of just jacking.
Yeah, exactly. And it worked when Kendrick is shooting 80% from the field, and it's wow, this Adelaide team looks insane. But it's just they've had that in the past with other imports with Franks and the other guy that left early, Randall. It's it looks great when it's working. When it's not working, it's really, really bad. So I think, I don't know if it's fool's gold these last 2 games just because they're hitting and they've DJ's been putting up good numbers. Humphreys and Trez have been solid, but I just think there's a lot of personalities on that team, and I don't know if you then add Jarrell, how it all works.
I think they're a prime example of a team that if things start going bad, it can go really bad, but if things start going well, it can go really well. I think they're one of those teams. I think they have the guys, the psyche of a lot of their guys. If they start getting a sniff that they're winning and they can actually do something, they could potentially go to a final series. But they can also go the in-between. I don't think they're going to be in the middle consistent. I think their ceiling is super high, but I also think there's a cliff edge to that ceiling that they need to be careful of.
For sure. And they've got good veterans on that team in Detch and Kadee and stuff that can hopefully, bring some sort of level to those psyches. But I don't know. It's just a lot of personality, and it just hasn't worked in Adelaide with the past with how management and the CEO operate. But with this new coaching staff, they might have the staff there to kind of mitigate a lot of those problems. So, but you're right, their potential is a top 3 team. Yeah,
I agree. Tasmania 7. They just managed to grind out wins. I mean, the game yesterday, I don't know if you caught it, but they stole that. Perth gave it away. I don't know if Perth gave it away or if Tassie stole it. Some questionable. Doyle hits that big 3. Why do you have Bryce even on the floor for a defensive possession, number 1, and then have him on Doyle, who's this absolute height advantage there to shoot right over, and then number 3, do you foul on purpose and put him at the line for 2 free throws so they don't get the 3 up? There was a lot of different things there going on. I thought Perth were real unlucky not to win that one and kind of gave it away a little bit with some different things that went on. But they just find a way to grind out games. I saw the score. I was watching the first quarter, and it was 24-9, I think.
Yeah, ugly.
And most people look at that and be like, "Oh, Tassie's in some trouble." I was like, "This is Tassie game. It's grind out." And then all of a sudden, Perth started to struggle to score in a second. It's playing in the mud in the 30s, and it's just clunky. I'm like, that's Tassie. This is perfect for them. They're going to come back and they'll be in this game. And they did come back. They ended up stealing a win. They just managed to get it done. I mean, Doyle, phenomenal shots late to keep him in the game. He hit 2 big threes, actually. Hit the one that sent it to overtime. He hit the one a couple of minutes before that to cut the lead back or get in the lead by a couple. And then I think Pepper hit a 3. But great game. McDonald out is huge for them. I think they're really missing him. They're missing another guard to come in and guard and hit big shots for him. But they find a way. I think they'll be in this. I think they'll be in the 6, but it'll be towards the bottom of that region.
Yeah, 100%. As long as Tassie have the opportunity to play in Tassie, they're going to be a tough beat. Them in that MyState Bank Arena, they're just a different team than what you see on the road. And I think it'll be interesting once McDonald comes back. You don't want to see Tassie in one of those play-in games because they're going to be at your neck. So
and McVeigh, there is room. There is. I've heard some people now. You hope McVeigh has as long as stay as he can in the NBA, but I've heard rumors that Tasmania is preparing for him to be back December-ish.
Which, if they get
so-
him, they're a top 3.
They're back at
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
they're a
basically
top
the
three
same
team.
roster.
Yeah.
It's basically the same roster. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Look, I hope he does well in camp, but
Of course.
Houston's pretty deep in his position, which I kind of question why they brought him in anyway. They've got a lot of guys kind of in his 3/4 is he
Yeah.
3? Is he a 4? Kind
A lot of young guys too who they're going to want to play.
young athletes,
Yeah.
and a lot of their previous picks play that similar position, right? And then Brooks can go 2-3 at times, so it makes things. Jeff Green's there as well, so yeah, it makes things interesting. But that's just kind of what I heard from people that are in the know in Tasmania is they're kind of just sitting there, rubbing their hands together, saying we'll just hold water till December when we can get him back, because obviously he's two-way. The G League stuff starts a couple of weeks after the NBA. And then it's a matter of whether he can stay on there. I think his salary, he gets a portion of it up front anyway. So I think he might come to a decision where, do I want to stay in the G League and grind this out if I don't have a legitimate call-up option? And I'm sure Houston will be honest with him at that point, that we have you as a call-up guy where we'll bring you up and down, or no, we're just going to keep him in the G League for the whole season. Then he might just say, you know what, I'll go back, or they could potentially cut him. So, but that would be huge for Tasmania if it does happen. So we'll see how that goes. 8 Perth, probably unlucky to be in 8 at the moment. I mean, Sydney had full control of the game against them. They grinded back and almost stole it. We deserved that win by 1, but they arguably could have won that game. We had some big shots towards the end to get it back. And then yesterday's game, so they could easily be 3-1 in my opinion. But they look clunky. They don't look like, Pinder once again. Their marquee guy, just consistency is an issue for him. Had a better game yesterday, at least rebounding the ball, but just struggles at times to find his place in the offense, especially when Bryce is getting it going or someone else. Elijah Pepper, I love. I think he's played his way into, he was highly touted for a lot of teams. We had, conversations, but we didn't have the minutes to give that he kind of wanted. But he's a bucket in this league, and those big body guards do well in the NBL, and he'll be an NBL player for a long, long time, as long as he wants to be. But yeah, Perth just seems clunky. It seems clunky, and they're a bit of luck. Okay, Windler out, Webster out. Okay, fair enough. But Daly was out for United when they got absolutely pummeled over there on your home court. You can't lose by 30 at home when you're missing 2 players and they're missing one of their better players. You got to at least be in the game somewhere. And but they're still figuring things out. I think Doolittle's been really good for him. He's kind of just a solid presence for them. Seems like a calming presence for him. Whenever they needed a bucket against Tassie, he got to the elbow, pull up jumper, got in the lane. But Pinder's a big one for them. I think he needs, if he's consistent and can just bring consistent production, it puts them in a different stratosphere. Bryce hasn't started off like Bryce usually plays. I mean, he's shooting free throw lines, probably helping his numbers a little bit. He's getting there a lot, but I think it's teams are starting to throw a lot of bodies at him. You're starting to notice he's obviously getting older. I don't think he's lost a step yet, but he's getting close to that region. And we know he's a bucket. And we know next week he'll come out and drop 30 or 35 or 40. But teams are noticeably trying to get the ball out of his hands, either in softer blitzes or softer double teams, or just going hard, getting the ball out of his hands, and then staying up and in him and daring someone else to make plays for him. And it's worked against Perth so far because no one else, Windler had a few games where he knocked down some shots, but they're daring someone else when the game's getting tight to make shots. But Perth, look, I still have them in the 6. Obviously, most people have them in the 4. I think they'll be 4, 5, 6 region. But they're struggling right now.
I had them high. I had them in like the 2-3 spot up there with Illawarra. I think they have all the talent and the pieces. And if you remember last season, they started very similarly to this, where everyone was
that massive homestand eventually. Yeah,
and everyone was talking about, and Keanu had that famous press conference, like kind of like, oh, it will click. Just be patient. I think they were like 2-5 or 2-6 or something.
Yeah.
So I don't think they need to panic just yet. But I think you're right. I think Bryce needs help, and I think they were hoping that would be Henschel this year, like he would take that step. But I think
he's still young.
Yeah, you see Pepper starting to take those minutes now, and you need a guy that's going to just be confident in terms of like he's not going to hesitate to like kind of put it in people's throats. So I think he will sneak in and kind of steal some of Henschel's minutes moving forward. And I think Windler's a big one for them as well. Like on most teams, I see him as a starter in the league. So for him to come off the bench for them, I think is huge. And if he can kind of approach that role as like a, come in, get his for those, 15 minutes and really like look to kind of put the ball in the hole, especially help them space the floor. And then I think you hit the nail on the head. I think Keanu's confused on whether or not he wants to play inside or outside. Because there's times where you see him floating out looking for those kind of like catch and shoot threes, whereas traditionally his game's been downhill,
that's the thing with
attack.
In Cairns, it was all high tempo basketball, throwback to Keanu in the trail, and he's just going. I don't think you can do that as much with the way Perth runs their offense and having a Bryce Cotton. You want to get the ball in your best player's hands. It's Bryce Cotton. So then Keanu's going to find ways to fit in with that, and I just don't think it's strength. I think he's more of a, let's not run anything too intricate and give me the ball, let me go downhill and create it that way. And I think that's just not the way they play, and at times they try to run up some up tempo stuff, but just resulted in horrible shots. Like there was a couple of quick one bounce pull ups in transition where you're just like not a good shot. So I think they'll figure it out. John's a look, by all reports, I know he's getting killed and he's the right coach for Perth. He knows the game and he works hard and he's gonna try to make adjustments. And he cares and he's gonna be in the gym. He's gonna be cutting film. He's gonna be talking to guys. It's just a matter of getting him, like you said, it's gonna eventually click. You just want to make sure it clicks, late October rather than clicking in December. Because I think this season, if you get down early and have a bad record by December-ish, I think it's gonna be very hard to claw back because you're gonna have so many teams because of the way the playing has been structured, where you're going to have teams that still have life that are in 7. And so there's going to be no easy beats. 8 might even still have life late in the season. We saw that last season. Everyone was still I think the top 9 was still mathematically capable for the 6 with 1 game left in the season.
Exactly.
Which is wild. So it's not like seasons have passed where it's January and you're playing the 9 and they're kind of got guys injured and they're rebuilding for next season and they're not really too much care about the game and you can tick the box and get the win. That's going to be very hard to do. So I think Perth just got to be careful that they don't fall behind the 8 ball too soon. Brisbane currently in 9. They're 0-3. We'll have them bottom 2, if not bottom, pre-season. I just think that no offense to their guys, I don't think they're talented enough. I don't think their imports are at an elite level. When you look at the top 2 or 3 teams' imports and you compare them, they're solid in moments, but they're not consistently a holy shit, get the ball out of this hands type imports. They seem like they're more like team offense will get us in our stuff. That's kind of our strength. So that's a struggle, and I just don't think they play hard enough for stretches. I think McDaniel out. He's their hardest playing guy, their best defender. Losing him really hurts them as far as the playing hard aspect. I think they've got some talented free flowing guys they're just not. I don't see them as a hard playing team, and you see that. Sydney were up 30 at one point, and then we'll start playing hard now, and then Sydney obviously put the cue in the rack, but they grinded back. The scoreline was flattering. It was probably more of a blowout than it was a 9-point game. That's partly Sydney's fault, but it shouldn't take Brisbane getting hit in the mouth that badly to switch on and then get fired up. And I just think they go in ebbs and flows of when they want to play hard. I think the one thing that's non-negotiable in this league is you got to play hard throughout, and there might be nights you don't make shots, and there might be nights someone out-talents you, no problem. As long as you give an effort. They don't give 40 minutes of effort, in my opinion, and they don't have the talent. Like sometimes really talented teams, maybe you could argue the Kings right now. I don't think it's an effort thing. I think it's more of a fit thing with us right now, and it's clunky. But sometimes there's teams that are super talented that can just play hard for 20 minutes and get away with it. They're a team that has to play hard for 60 minutes in a 40-minute game to get wins because they just don't have the talent. So I think we're going to see a pretty rough season for Brisbane, I think, as far as wins and losses. But credit to them, they moved to the new arena up there at the Entertainment Centre. I went to that game live. Much better product than Nissan, like night and day different. And I'll give Brisbane Bullets fans credit. They stayed till the end. You don't see that a lot. They were down. It was 27 at one point in the start of the 4th. They stayed right till the end. And I noticed that in Nissan Arena last year, or 2 years ago, the Kings, we beat them by 50. everyone stayed till the end. They love basketball. They love hoops. They stayed. Like if that was, Melbourne, maybe even Sydney, maybe even, Adelaide, like fourth quarter, you start to see those doors opening and you start to see, at least the freeway run will be nice by the time the game's over. Credit to them, man. They stayed the whole time.
Yeah.
So, but they're in for a rough year, I think, loss wise.
Yeah, you look at Tassie, and even with Tassie in their roster, they have to play and grind out games, and their effort has to be up there the whole game. Like if Brisbane, I don't even see Brisbane's imports holding a candle to Tassie's imports, and they're still not playing hard. So I think you're completely right, and I had them bottom 2 with New Zealand at the start of the season. So I don't expect much.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll watch that space. And then last right now, Southeast Melbourne. Look, arguably their roster should not be last. They should not be in last spot. The New Zealand game, they let slip. That was inexcusable. But I didn't have them last. I didn't have them in the 6. I had them 7. Maybe they can sneak in to 6 or 5 because they do have talented guys. But scary times for them, man. 0-4. The schedule doesn't get any lighter for them. There's, the Walton Sobey thing has come up. They're both high usage, need ball in hand guys. When we played Southeast Melbourne in the preseason, one thing that I noticed, they actually beat us in the preseason. They played pretty well. Was Sobey? It seemed like Sobey had taken to the role of just running the wing and running hard down the wing. Walton's our usage guy, and Sobey was feeding off transition wing threes, transition rip throughs. That seems to have gone now. Seems like, we know Sobey wants and needs the ball in his hands, but that doesn't fit when you got a guy like Walton Jr., who's an elite creator. Obviously having him in Sydney, we had to figure that out because X is really good at that role too. So we had to balance those two out. And at times Derrick would get frustrated, X would get frustrated about, hey, hit me in that trail I want to create, because they both want to create for their team. How that works, I don't know. Geordie Hunter's had a pretty good start of the season, but again, his consistency is key to how they play. They're just really thin in the big man, 5-man spot. You need him on the floor for 30 plus minutes, and Geordie's had a history of having ebbs and flows with that, with foul trouble and whatnot. So they need him out when he's playing well. That they had a chance. Their imports are okay. I think Hurt's decent. They've got some okay looks there. This roster's just not a last place roster. I just something's obviously a miss there, and they need to figure it out. But I don't like where they're at. I think that 0-4s are tough. Now everyone's staring down the barrel like, is it going to be on a 5 weekend, 0-6, and then the pressure starts rolling up, and then fans start asking questions, and then this early in the season for this to happen, it hurts your home game attendance in the NBL. When you have this poor of a start, fans are kind of like, do I, don't I? Oh shit, we're 2-6. It's probably over for this season. I'm just not going to go, and that's where it hurts you business wise.
Yeah, and I don't know, like they're 1-14 in their last 15, rolling over from last season. So like I don't know if it's like a coaching thing. Mike Kelly's a record across all his coaching jobs. Like obviously not in there. This isn't like no knowledge, but to me it just looks like a coaching issue, because they like you said, they're talented enough to be fighting for a playing spot.
Yeah, they are, and I guess it is the toilet bowl this weekend. It is Southeast Melbourne versus Brisbane on Saturday. So
someone's getting
a win, unless it goes to 18 overtimes. But someone's getting a win. But I think, I think Southeast Melbourne should get their first win.
They need that.
It seems like they're at home. Are they at home? Yeah, they're at home.
Yep.
You got to win that game. If they don't win that one, they're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Brisbane aren't expected to win that one. Brisbane can sneak some down the line, but
It's a tough one. I don't know if Simon Mitchell, the new GM, hired Mike. Like, at what point as an organization do you start looking? Do you even look at switching the coach if you start 0-5, 0-6?
Not right now.
Yeah,
I mean, you might as well continue on. Like unless things go really bad. And look, I don't think Mike Kelly's a coach that's disorganized or bad in the locker room where you're like, holy shit, alarm bells.
Right.
We've lost our group completely.
Yep.
But if it gets to a point where you think, shit, we've got players that aren't buying in, they've already checked out, you got to bring someone in to rattle the cage. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard when it's this early in the season. And where do you go? What do you do?
Yeah.
Who's the replacement? There's obviously going to be players that that like the coach, don't like the coach, and that's the hard thing as management. But they, there's obviously an issue there they need to figure out. But they've got a chance to do it on the weekend. It's just going to be a tough game, I think, for both those teams to grind one out.
Yep.
But don't want to be in their spot. All right, moving on real quick. Just a couple of little small things. Referees. 3 rounds of basketball has been some good and bad officiating games, in my opinion. I think I touched on this online. I think the league needs to just acknowledge that referees make mistakes and be forthright in it and accept the fact that, hey, our referees made a mistake. I know the referees hate it, but just like players and coaches and management, their jobs are on the line when they make mistakes and they're called out for it. I think it's the same kind of thing. Look, I think we're in Australia especially, it's like, you've got this whole, it's taboo to talk to the referees or criticize them. And yes, you have to be respectful. You don't want hands on players. You don't want people swearing in referees' face because it trickles down to then junior sports. But then you also want to have an accountability where referees either put their hand up for mistakes or a league says, hey, the referee screwed this one up. We're going to better educate them. They're going to have to do X, Y, Z during the week to do a bit more or explain to fans, what do we do? How do we watch film with them? They meet with Scott Butler and they have conversations, or they meet with the coaches panel or whatever it is. I think there's just a bit more transparency around that. They should be noted. There were the 3 notables for me of just head scratching calls. There was a little scuffle, Adelaide versus Southeast Melbourne. I don't know if you saw it, but Vodanovic knocked someone over, went to pick him up. Harrell comes in and pushes Vodanovic. There's a little scuffle ensues, and Vodanovic ends up getting a tech out of it, along with Harrell. And I'm scratching my head, like looking at the replay, like, why did he get a technical foul? That was a head scratcher. Clint Steindl in the Tasmania-Perth game, sideline out of bounds twice in a late game situation, just walked up and down the sideline as he's inbounding the ball. Like, my understanding per FIBA rules is you technically can't travel on a sideline, I believe, or you can't, or it's 2 steps. There's some rule where you can't leave your plane where you handle the ball. You can kind of stretch out, but I'm not sure. I know it used to be you couldn't travel on a sideline or a baseline. Like, you couldn't just walk around.
Only on a bucket. Only on a score.
On a score you can move. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Dead ball situation, I believed you couldn't travel. I think that was the rule, but I don't know. It's kind of a one that's not policed heavily. Steindl literally walked up and he walked from where he was given the ball on the sideline to almost the half court line to get one in bounds. Did you see John really losing his shit? And he was right.
Yeah.
And then did it again for the game winner. So they got to notice that, especially late in a game. That's arguably bad. Will Magnay grabs a player by the throat, gets fined by the NBL post game, and receives a suspended sentence, not given a tech in game, even after review. So I'm sitting there like, that's costly for Perth. That's a free throw. That's 2 free throws, right? For an unsportsmanlike act.
And possession.
Yeah. So you're like, after the fact, you've admitted, okay, yeah, that's a penalty worthy. How do your referees not assess a technical? So they're 3 things that I think they need to fix.
Did he receive an unsportsmanlike during the game?
No,
for
nothing.
That
nothing at all.
And they've handed out unsportsmanlike.
He did it super quick.
For a lot less.
But the issue was they went to review what happened.
And still.
And only saw the start of it. And then he didn't. Yeah, I found that very, very silly. But just basic ones. What I've liked about the referee so far, that the flopping is starting to really dry up. And I think I credit that to the referees. I think there's a happy medium there. There was a time last season where they wouldn't call any charge. Just like, if you fall over, bad luck. I think there's still a happy medium there, but they've done a good job of just telling players like, no, I'm not calling that. Like, I'm not calling. And it's at the start of games. If you get on it from the start and you let players are smart, they're going to figure it out quickly. If you're taking these flopping charges and we're not calling it, get up, mate. You're putting your team out defensively. You're giving up a layup. Keep doing it. We're not going to call it. Yeah. Players stop straight away, and coaches are on them. Yeah. They've allowed much more, probably even at times over the top physicality. So they're not calling ticky-tacky stuff, and it's bordering more towards over the top. But I'd rather that. I'd rather that balance than calling every touch where we see 40 fouls each team and 80 free throws in an NBL game. They've done a really good job of adjusting. So as I criticize the refs, I think those 2 things to me have been a standout of this season so far.
And I think it got really bad last year with the ticky-tacky stuff. Like, some games it was just like, especially the Melbourne Tassie series late in those first 2 games were like, they were calling everything, and then it just completely would shift
In game 3,
in
yeah.
game 3, where
It's
all
like
of a sudden
WWE.
Chile is just like full court, like 2 arm bars, like pushing guys out of bounds. Like it's just like as the only thing that I think anyone cares about is the consistency, right? So
Yeah.
if they can carry this throughout the whole season and into the playoffs, it just makes for a better product.
And I think preseason they struggled. There was a couple of games in Hoopfest they struggled, but I think from there, I think they've done a pretty good job of like, we're going to make you play grown man basketball where if you're trying to flail while you're dribbling, we're not calling it.
Yeah.
We're just not going to call it. So that was good. And then league likes, I think entertaining physical basketball, I think that's what we want to see. And I think they've allowed that through the referees. I think it's been really good to watch. Trying to watch the basketball play out without referee influence too much. There's going to be times where referee calls influence games, perfectly normal, but that was too consistent in previous NBL seasons. I think they're starting to let the players decide the result instead of, a ref comes out and wants to blow a whistle just because, I think that's a ticky-tacky foul. I'm going to give them, that. The storytelling production seems to be improving. I think they're doing a better job with just trying to tell stories outside of just the game, but the production value of it's slowly getting better. There's still room for improvement, but from where it was 2 or 3 years ago, even last season, I think that's important, and I think we need to tell stories and guys like Harrell and really get in his psyche. The mic'd up stuff, I think pretty good for the most part, but you might not want to pick, Jack White's a pretty quiet guy. They mic'd him up yesterday. He's kind of an introverted, quieter guy. The way he goes about his business, probably not the right candidate. I know he's a star player, but get the guys that talk a lot of shit. They're fun to watch. Like Harrell, love him or hate him, he's good. Guys that talk a lot and just are up and rambunctious, I think are the guys you want to mic up. And I think the crowds are engaged and growing. I think that's clear when you go to an NBL game compared to where it was 3-4 years ago. The crowds are continuing to grow. People are actually not kind of know and are educated about it now, rather than like, we're just going to the basketball and you're like, who'd you watch? Oh, that was that green team versus they just go to the basketball because it's a cool thing. People actually now can have a conversation about who the starting 5 is, who the team is coming into town. I hate that guy. I like that guy. That's important. And I think that builds, NBL is really hard to build that relationship because of the amount of turnover on rosters. That's what's hard, where, NBA star players in that city for 5-6 years, they're integrated in the community, they do charity work. Harder to do in the NBL. That's a tricky part we have. We just don't have long-term, even coaches, like they go on to bigger and better things. But I think right now they're doing a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, and I think it's become better over time and more consistent over time. Like you can actually put a player on a team and like you don't identify with that player being anywhere else. I think Zave in Sydney is a great example of that. Like there's definitely guys now where there's like holdover, whereas when I was growing up, there was no such thing. Like it was like just every year that each team would have a brand new roster. Yeah. So I think that's great. And I think in terms of storytelling stuff, they're letting stuff happen naturally.
100%.
They're not forcing any narratives. It's just like, this is the actual narrative and they're just telling it. And I think that's where you see a lot of the improvement, because it's not like you always use the Kardashian, wording. And I think that's spot on. Like, I think they're just kind of letting the season play out as it is. And then they just kind of tell it how it happens.
And letting the games speak for themselves. Like Harold's going to give you headlines. Just let him do it. You don't need to prod him to do it. And I think they're starting to learn that. And then, some of these characters you bring over, they're high risk, high reward, but they're good for the league. We're talking. A few dislikes. I'm still going to go music all game cranked up to the max. I know I'm old. Apologize. Look, I think in arena it's split. Some people like it, some people don't. In arena, horrible TV product in my opinion. Like when you watch some of these games, and I have to turn my TV down because it's just like doof 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 doof. Wild hits 10, whatever it is. It's just over the top. I think that I'm a basketball purist, and I get this. They say, well, there's fans that come to the game that aren't basketball fans. It's their first time or whatever. Totally get it. Just do it in ebbs and flows. It doesn't need to be 10-minute, club mix 2019 play. It just keeps going. I think I would love for them to fix that. And the volume level of it, I think, is just insane.
Like being on the baseline, it's actually like deafening. Like you can't even hear the play that's happening right in front of you, because the speakers will be like literally sitting behind you. And the blitz was the worst I've ever heard it in any setting.
Small arena.
It was insane. Like you could not hear anything. So I think I hate it, especially during live play. I get it in between and like
ramp up crowd.
Yeah.
Put the other team off.
The way the NBA does it. And then even just kind of like build up music, but not like actual mixes and stuff. Like have like you know, the
30 seconds of
defensive
it.
clap
Yeah.
or whatever. Like that creates atmosphere. But like while there's live playing happening, I don't want to hear rapping and stuff.
I want to hear the squeaks. And
Yeah.
then we talk about storytelling. I want to hear the shit talking.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to hear Harold talking shit to Xavier
Yeah.
Cooks and then Cooks dunking on someone and yelling at it. I want to hear that
Yeah.
shit. That's what I want to see. And then 20 seconds later, play a bit of music.
Yeah,
No problem whatsoever.
100%.
I think it's just you gotta figure out the diet of it. I think there's a time and place for music, no doubt whatsoever. I just don't think it's like 4 straight minutes of music. I think it detracts from your product so much. And for TV, the TV product of it, it's just not great. It's not great in my opinion. And the only other one I would say is I just think some commentators are not up to par. Whether you like it or not, there's some commentators. I know the NBL are trying to cover the DEI metrics by diversity, equity, inclusion, and we're going to have one guy and one woman and tickle. No problem if they're good. The issue is when you've got 2 good commentators and 1 bad, it's so much more glaring.
Yeah,
like it's so much more glaring, and you actually feel bad because the conversation just doesn't flow, and there's like silly giggles and silly things being said, and there's a few. I'm not going to name them, I'm not going to go hard, but I think there's a few in the league that need heavy improvement or just need to be pulled, and you got to keep it professional. You can't, if you've got two guys or 2 girls that have done all their research, they're well read, they know what's going on, and the third one just there because we got to fill that seat with this certain demographic, it looks and sounds horrible. And I'm in a bunch of different chats with people from fans of mine that follow the NBL to ownership groups and this and that, and it's generally the same consensus. I'm muting this game. I'm muting this game, and you're like, and then people say, oh, it's because you don't like that. I'm like, I can separate not liking a person. There's plenty of people I don't like that are really good at their job, and I can say, I don't like you as a person, but fuck, you're good at what you do, whatever it is, coaching, podcast production, servicing my car. I don't like you, but you do a good job. I can separate those two. I'm not one of those people, but I think they just need to relook at how they're doing that right now.
They were doing such a good job. I think bringing in basketball heads like Hools and those guys in recent years has really uplifted the commentary. And like, I think it was a bit of a stale kind of, at a stale point where it was the same voices and the same rhetoric consistently. So they did a good job integrating all these new voices. I just think they've gone too far now where you got people coming in that don't have the knowledge or like the foundation to kind of speak on anything. Like you said, it's super glaring
especially when they talk basketball X's and O's.
Exactly.
And you're just like,
that's where it's
like junior under 12s coaches, that's wrong in under 12s, and if you know the game, albeit I know it at elite level, people that just follow it on an average basis would be like, that doesn't make sense. That's not what Gazy said last week, and then there was a few games this weekend where commentators are going back and forth, and that third person chimes in and says something, and it's bad when the other 2 commentators don't follow up. It just goes quiet. All right, on to the next play.
And then they just start the play-by-play coverage.
Yeah, so look, small problems can be fixed, but I just hope that they get more people in there that know the game. There's always this conversation of, well, look, we're trying to get our game to a different dynamic by bringing those people in that might not know the game as well. But then there's a risk there of you're shitting on your actual people that are loving it and following it. You might lose them to get maybe some influencer type people that like that person or whatever it is. That's a huge risk in my opinion. I don't think those fans are consistently showing up every weekend. You want to still make sure your consistent fans are happy with the product. And for the most part, like we've said, it's good. The product complemented the league and numerous different things, but that's just one thing I'd like to see. That I don't want to mute games, man. For the most part, 80% of them I think are good. I think there's just some that really it's just a noticeable step down. I don't want to mute my games. I don't want people texting me saying, WTF, like who is commentating this game? And I'm just like, well, it's not part of what I do, so I can't. Yeah. But it is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I think it's easily addressed as well. Like, it wouldn't be hard to identify those people, and whether you uptrain them or upskill them and have them in an environment where they can get better before they actually start doing live broadcasts.
Yeah.
Like I don't see, like, you get a John Casey in and you set up a program and you train these people
100%.
up. It's not that hard.
And credit to the NBL, they've gone out of. I've noticed a lot of the commentaries not out of the little dungeon anymore, which is great. You're seeing the commentators in right now. Some places pose problems. I know Cairns Some state, it's hard to get crews up there. It's so expensive when you go talking far north Queensland and a few other spots. Totally get it, but they've actually made an effort now to get, you know, in Sydney, in Adelaide, in Perth, in Tassie. You've seen the commentators in arena now. That's a huge step forward, and I know they tested it out. Maybe they thought, well, it's not as good as we thought. We're going to go back to this, and they've fixed that problem, which is good. So it's been good so far. But yeah, just hopefully a little bit more training, and maybe even I know they look at the NBL one at times. They have commentators on there, and they send people through there to then bank up their resume and have some proofs to send to the league. This was my games. Maybe go to that, send them through there first. But there's a few commentators that haven't even gone through any process. They've just come through because they're a name in a different league or a different demographic. We'll put you in that's got to work, and it's like, ooh, no. So.
And there's a lot of good NBL One commentators that have been doing it since the NBL One inception. So like whether or not that's a program, and you filter them through there and get them to do the reps like that, like whatever the case. But you're completely right. Throwing these people in the deep end when they have no knowledge of basketball.
It's almost not their fault sometimes, because I would say, you know, like whatever they get, 500 or 1,000 a game to do a game.
Yeah.
You know, most people would be like, I'll take that.
Easy,
I'll give it a crack. And then you're like, oh shit. Like, but then they keep asking you to come back because you're ticking a box. You're like, so just something, but nothing major. All in all, I think the league's in a good place. I think this is going to be a really good season. I know we say that every season, but there's a lot of teams that can just, you know, you don't often see, you know, a 7th, 8th place team coming in and pummeling. You know, like Cairns comes in and pummels United, and then United pummeled you don't see that, especially this early in the season. Usually the good teams are good, and then there's a bit of adversity and it changes. But this is very, very interesting, and looking forward to seeing where it all ends.
Yeah, and it's like historically the NBL has been pretty top heavy, so it's just good to see a nice balance. The eight teams on any given night can beat another team, so it's just like it's good as a fan to be able to tune into pretty much any game and know that you're gonna have a good like contest on your hands. Whereas previously, 100%. You know, Sydney, Melbourne, maybe one other team, Perth, you know, and then it's just like the drop off after that would be pretty substantial. Yeah.
Or Salad Dwellers last season, so you can't put us in that mix. This season you can, but last season we were a bit of a struggle. But yeah, but even Tassie, like they were a couple of years ago, everyone had them towards the bottom, and and then even Cairns, you know, they're a budget team, they're a community-going club, and
Illawarra too.
They're competitive. So it goes to say, you know, at times you can have a bunch of talent and still not finish as well as a team that's well coached and together. So yeah, that's the psychology of sport. All right, until next week.